Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you all again. I'm going to just start by thanking Steve for giving me this opportunity, pushing me out of my comfort zone. I've been used to speaking to groups of people at work over the years, presenting to senior managers and things, but it's been a while, and it always, you always get that bit of adrenaline, so it's nice to just give it another go. And I'm going to just give you a bit of a story around how I've ended up meeting all you guys and being part of this business community. I'm going to start, before I tell you any more, with a video. I haven't then get on any other slides, but it just starts off with a bit of background, and I'll tell you a bit more afterwards. Hopefully you can see it. There is audio, but it's only a bit of background music. So this, you might not have been expecting this, is a Volvo hitting a wall at 35 miles an hour. That's a real Volvo in a real test lab, 35 miles an hour. The image on the right is a computer model of the same event, okay? And from your distance, you might not be able to sort of see so much of the detail, and it looks pretty realistic. You can see there's occupants being held in with seatbelts, airbags, yeah, that is, looks like it might just have, I'm just doing it through my phone internet. It might catch up in a minute, but hopefully we've got just enough to get an idea. There's a glass floor there, which means they've got cameras underneath, so you can see what's happening to the structure underneath the car. And the beauty of the computer model, which is, it might regenerate, is completely numerical, mathematical model of that real impact event. And basically, this is the origins of my career. I was an automotive engineering graduate, and I started my career at Rover Group, if you remember that, back in the 90s. And I found myself learning how to build computer models of cars and crash them into a wall. And the beauty of the numerical model is that you can study it. Let's just give this one more go. No, it's not going to play ball, so we'll just leave that running in the background and probably make me jump in a minute. And here I learned the specific skills to do all that, and it was very technical. And the main thing to sort of tell you about this today, other than I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight into the motor industry, it might not be something that you're that aware of. I can guarantee we all take for granted the cars we drive around, and there's a hell of a lot of work goes into it. And so my small part of that was making sure that all the vehicles I worked on passed all their legislative requirements. They provided the necessary levels of safety for their occupants. And I did that through spending weeks turning the geometry that the designers were creating for the vehicle into these mathematical models made up of hundreds of thousands, topping millions of little elements which have some maths around them. And when you join them all together and the maths all kind of joins up, you can work out how it deforms, what stresses go through it, whether or not it's going to fail, how much energy it absorbs, which is what the important bit is, making sure the integrity of the structure's there. And then, yeah, sorry about this. So that's my background, and that really gave me the sort of the foundations for how my brain works. And what I'm going to tell you is my story of how I got from there to where I am now. And it's given me a problem-solving mindset, real attention to detail. I've also got some experiences that I'll reflect on with regards to the sizes of the organisations I've worked for. I've been a small cog in a big machine and a bigger cog in a smaller machine in terms of the business size. And also a little bit of my thoughts on the people I've worked with and the leadership styles I've come across over the years. And hopefully you'll find some of it interesting. So in my early career, I started off, as I said, for Rover, about the time they got taken over by BMW. I don't know if you remember that. And then after that, I decided to go off as a contractor, actually, and worked at Lotus over in Norfolk for a while, and then back into the Midlands with Jaguar. And during this sort of early career period, I really got to discover how complicated car design is. I've gone in to do the engineering, but not only are you focusing on the engineering, you've got to make sure that the product's going to meet a business case. So you're working with the finance team. You've got to sell the car to customers. So the marketing team are going to lay down a set of targets and requirements for the product. You've got to decide on which materials to use. So you're working with materials engineers. You've got to make sure that you can manufacture it within the constraints of your factory. So you're working with manufacturing. And the design team who want it to look pretty, and things like aerodynamics, so that's going to glide through the air. So it's very complicated. You're dealing with a diverse set of departments and people. And so I was starting to learn all those skills. And as I said, in my specialism of computer-aided engineering, I was building these very complicated models, learning how to do it. And then not only that, dealing with the triumph and disaster of what happens next. So you build a model, you've got to put together its geometry, its materials, how all the parts fit together. Say in a lot of cases, putting an occupant and an airbag model in there. You've got to provide all the criteria for that. And you then submit it to a supercomputer. A lot of time we batch those jobs up and send them off over the weekend because they could take maybe 24 hours to calculate. And you'd come back in on a Monday morning and you'd either have a set of really informative results on what to do next with the design, go back to the design team. Yeah, we need to change that. We need to improve the joint there. We need to change the vent hole size on the airbag so it's the right consistency. And or you'd be met with a very simple message called run failed. And so I learned to take a lot of care over the detail that we put into the model, but also making sure that you were minimizing those risks that were going to cause the model to fail. Ultimately, when it wasn't a failure and you did get successful results, you had an awful lot of data to manage. And so this is where my love of taking a massive set of data that is incomprehensible in its raw state and turning it into insightful analysis. So in this case, you get a lot of numbers and a lot of data come out. What you're looking for is how much force is coming through into the occupant, how much energy is being absorbed, as I've said. And you get that by taking the data, post-processing it, sometimes with specialist software, but sometimes when you're tracking results from run to run to run, what's your trends, an analysis of that? Are you heading in the right direction? Are you going off down a blind alley? So that's really where I learned to take all that data and make it work for us to get us in the direction we were going in. At this stage in my career, of course, I wasn't really a manager or a leader. I was pretty much doing as I was told, using processes that I accepted were the right thing to do. And that was it, really. Just got on and enjoyed being part of these exciting, complicated engineering projects. When they hit the public domain, you're kind of really proud of what you've done. But after that, moved on to the middle phase of my career, really, in this industry. And we're talking, just to put it into context, MG Rover, up until it went bust at Longbridge. I was there the day we closed the doors, sadly. But then out of that came working with Shanghai Automotive and the Chinese SAIC. And then after that, I did a decent stint of 8 years at Jaguar Land Rover. Now, during this time, I was obviously developing, I had all the technical skills, and now I'm starting to maybe bring in the younger engineers and be their team leader, help them learn from the same mistakes that I've made, and on to honing my technical skills. But now I'm at the stage where I'm sort of questioning: is this the right way to do it? Could we do this process better? How are we managing the data? How are we communicating it to the rest of the business? So this is where I started to use other tools that I had around me, and Excel became my best friend. You can do an awful lot with a spreadsheet, and taking the data, presenting it to seniors in a graphical format, taking my inspiration from Florence Nightingale, and a picture speaks 1,000 words in terms of the data you've got, and really coming to town with the processes we were using as well as the way I was presenting data. And this really helped us to improve the turnaround time for the models. The quicker you can get those insights out, the quicker you can decide what the next steps are, turn it around, and there's always a big rush to move the product on. Again, at this stage, I was probably still a small cog in a big machine, but there were positives. some of you will have been business owners all your lives, but some of you might have worked for larger companies or still do now. And obviously, you know, there's things like pensions. I was lucky enough to get access to a good company car scheme. And I even said goodbye to my appendix in Seoul, South Korea, all at the care of the healthcare scheme that I was under with my business. With the business I was working for. So definitely advantages to being an employee for a big business. But we'll come on to some of the pros and cons. And later on at JLR, one of the highlights of my career, you might be familiar with the Land Rover or Range Rover Velar. It sits in between the Evoque and the bigger Range Rovers. I got to see that project through from concept, so really defining how we were going to lay out the vehicle and make it work, all the way through to the launch party at the Geneva Motor Show. And it was a highlight of my career because I got to see so much of the process, learn much more than my individual department, lead a team of people working on the engineering, and see it go through its testing and sign-off process, and then work in the factory to launch it. And really, for me, I don't know if anyone's ever been to a car factory, but if you ever get the chance, I highly recommend it. To see the immense complexity of all of the, say, 6,000 parts that come together to build a car, the logistical complexity, and all the people working hard to deliver quality, repeatability, reliability. Excuse me. And an example I always give is you weld the body up, and it's got the doors and the boot and the tailgate on it. It comes into the assembly factory, and the doors are immediately taken off that vehicle. They're matching in terms of the paint color and the spec of the vehicle. The doors then disappear off into the roof of the factory on a conveyor. They go off to a completely different part of the building. They get dressed, as they call it, all the parts fitted to it, all the interior trim, all the electronics inside them. And right at the end of the production line, these doors appear right next to the exact same body shell that's been dressed with all its equipment as well. They come on the vehicle, and then it's pretty much at the end of line, and it rolls off for its quality checks. If you ever get a chance to go to the Mini factory in Cowley, or the Jaguar Land Rover factory up in Coventry, or where is it? I remember where the other one is. Then it's a fascinating place to go. So I got to spend a year launching that, and really learned a lot about leading a team. The negative side, I think, for me in this big business was I was getting to be a bigger cog in a smaller machine, but no, I wasn't. That's the next steps. Was the behaviours of particularly senior leaders as you get towards a tight deadline. And deadlines are there for a reason. You want to launch your product on time. We were going to lose, we kept being told, about £1 million a day if we missed the launch date. And we all really we're passionate about hitting those targets, but when it's getting tough, unforeseen things are happening, your managers are putting a bit of pressure on you. You realise their managers are putting pressure on them, their managers are putting pressure on them, and the people at the top putting pressure on them, the bottom line stopping with them on this £1 million a day loss and the successful launch of this product. Unfortunately, that stress can bring out some poor behaviours, and I've unfortunately seen a bit of that around, and this is where my mindset in my career is starting to think, do I like this environment? Am I happy here? I'm loving the technical challenge. I'm loving managing all this data. I'm loving developing the processes and streamlining all the work. But some of this behavior is not pleasant. And I reflect on this with when I talk to my wife about my 8 years at JLR, and I say, oh, maybe I should go back and work there one day. And she says, you are never stepping foot in that place again. And it's not because I didn't do some really fun, exciting things there and meet some great people. It's that her view of me during that time was stress and unhappiness. And as I got older, and as we come towards the sort of tail end of my story, it became more important to me that I was happy in my work, doing something that I enjoyed, and that my wife saw a better side of me. So this is sort of where that sort of thinking from my younger days starts to transition. So later on in my career, I then moved on from that, and I worked for special vehicles end of JLR, which was effectively a smaller business in itself. And I then worked for Lotus and Norton Motorcycles, And these are smaller companies. So I had most of my experience. So I'm a bigger cog in a smaller machine. What I reflect on from that is by now I was an experienced leader. I could see all the process gaps in this business because they were effectively developing in themselves as businesses. And I got to help define what those processes were. I got to help set them up. I got to help create collaborative spreadsheets and other tools for automating what we were doing. And I really honed my ability to flex the most out of the big systems like the CAD systems that were managing the geometry, and the finance systems like SAP, and the engineering data and management data in between, and how they all related to each other. So at this point, I've reflected all on this. I've kind of feel like I've spent by now 30 years in an environment where I love cars. I love being part of creating new cars and seeing them rolled out to the public. I've loved leading junior engineers in their career. I've loved developing processes and making work for you. But the people side of things, these leadership behaviours, and ultimately, even in a smaller company and being a bigger fish in that company, still, unfortunately, never made it to being a CEO or a CTO. I'm still not making all the final decisions, and I'm still not quite comfortable with some of the decisions and the understanding that the seniors were having around what we were doing. So at the start of this year, I made a break for it, and I left my comfortable employment with pension and doing all these exciting engineering things, set up Sharp Sheets based around what I love doing. I reflected on what I wanted to do. I love solving problems with a logical mindset. I love looking at processes which have got they've either evolved to something inefficiently, or they've been built on bit by bit, and really taking a fresh eyes look at that and then rebuilding it as something efficient. And with my analysis tools, with my Excel skills and my programming skills, try to put in place something that really helps businesses speed up what they're doing with their business processes. So I set up the company. I can choose who I work with. I've chosen my own boss, which is me, for better, for worse. But I get to solve these problems and help businesses, become more efficient. Importantly as well, I've just described, hopefully some of it was interesting for you, a 30-year sort of evolution of my career in the motor industry, speaking to everyone at all these networking events. I get to suddenly hear about, insurance businesses, finance businesses, speak to business coaches, just, all these different fields of work I've never been involved with before, hearing their journeys. Some of you are also new to your businesses. Some of you have been doing it a long time. And it's been a really refreshing change for me. I don't have to work with any kind of grumpy senior management who are really putting the pressure on, other than perhaps my wife on occasion. I think I'll wrap up really and just say that in my journey, I've learned to study processes and apply my problem-solving mindset. I've got really good at data management, being precise in my work and applying attention to detail. I've reflected on being a small cog in a big machine, or the opposite, and also how I've got on with various people either alongside me or above me over the years, and ultimately realised, and it's easier said than done at particular stages in your career, and it just worked out at the right time for me. You can choose who you work with. And for me, that was a really important realization. Certain people that I was working with were very toxic, and I chose to walk away from it. And it was a scary new start for me, but I'm really enjoying where I am right now, albeit with its challenges and difficulties that no doubt you're all familiar with. So that's it from me, really. I'd just like to sort of say thank you for listening, and thank you for inviting me to do the talk. And I'm Dave Husson from Sharp Sheets. I've gone from developing efficient designs for vehicles to developing efficient processes for businesses. Thanks very much. Sorry about the video.